high desert and the great American Southwest. I bid you all good evening, good morning, as the case may be, across this great nation of ours. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast and Beyond AM. Great to have you. And here I am again, after a long absence. But this, I hope, will be it, folks. I'm taking much better anti-spaz medicine and better anti-inflammatory medicine, and I'm standing up straight again, and there's every hope in the world that I am here to stay. This time, nobody hopes that more than I do. God, I'm glad to be back. I'm telling you, I have missed this so much. You'll never know. I would like to welcome a new affiliate, WAGN in Marionette, Wisconsin. 1340 on the dial there, and hello to the GM, Jeff Magner, and the PD, Jim Medley. Glad to have you on board the ever-growing network. Been an investigator for many, many years on this program, as well as Dreamland, and she's impeccable. Her reports are absolutely impeccable. Here tonight's guest, and she is the guest for this evening, is Linda Moulton Howe. First on the agenda tonight is Cuba. Linda, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Art. Well, I wanted to know if you got to see the Leonid meteor shower Saturday to Sunday.
You betcha. My wife and I, of course, in Pahrump, Nevada, the skies are relatively dark compared to the rest of the world in the middle of the desert and clear with low humidity, and it was a perfectly clear night. Oh, Linda, it was incredible. It was incredible.
Same here. It was crystal clear. There wasn't a cloud, and at one point, between 4 and 5, I was counting at least 80 to 90 in the hour, and at one point there were 5 trails all in the sky at the same time, followed by whish, 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 whish.
Oh, right.
Never seen anything like it.
Linda, it was so bright. Some of them were so bright here that you could see your shadow.
Oh, they were just, exploding. I thought it was amazing, and these Leonids are the rocks and dust left over from the Tempel-Tuttle comet that orbits the sun. And comets and meteors have a surprising connection to this news update tonight about Cuba.
No kidding. Now, folks, I have not heard this yet. I refused to let Linda tell me about it earlier today. So.
We will get into this.
Okay.
Okay, now, first, to set the stage, the story about a possible megalithic site half a mile down off the western tip of Cuba first broke this past May when a Reuters news service reporter interviewed the deep ocean engineer who first reported unusual side-scan sonar of the discovery. Her name is Paulina Zalitsky. Mrs. Zalitsky was born in Poland, studied engineering in the Soviet Union, was assigned to work on a secret submarine base in Cuba during the Cold War, and eventually defected to Canada. There she met her current husband, businessman Paul Weinzweig. Now the couple own and operate a company called Advanced Digital Communications, or ADC, with offices in both Victoria, British Columbia, and Havana, Cuba. Their specialty is deep ocean exploration. ADC made news in November 2000 when Paulina Zalitsky found the wreckage of the famous USS Maine that blew up and sank in 1898.
That's something we found out about her later. I remember getting this story and sending it to you, Linda, and, I've done that with a lot of stories that turned out to be nothing. But this one, oh, man. Yeah, you talked to Paulina Zalitsky, and it was suddenly something.
Oh, absolutely. And it was a mysterious sinking, that USS Maine. It was 3 miles off the Havana coast and 2/3 of a mile down. And she got down there with a team, videotaped the battleship, which matched the old photographs. And now this year, Paulina Zalitsky reports that about 2,200 feet below Cuba's western tip, she has found, quote, a huge land plateau with clear images of what appears to be man-made, large-sized architectural designs partly covered by sand. From above, the shapes resemble pyramids, roads, and buildings, unquote. This week, I talked with both Paulina Zalitsky and Paul Weinswag and learned that in addition to the sonar images this late summer, they were able to get a videotape camera and lights down for a preliminary view in the underwater site with a robotic ocean vehicle known as an ROV.
So these are actual cameras?
Yeah, they actually have some preliminary videotape.
Huh.
And over the past several months...
Everybody should know how important this story is, because everybody shut their mouth. As you investigated, we found out National Geographic was looking into it and had an ongoing project, and they shut their mouths. Boy, they wouldn't tell us a thing.
Everybody has been very quiet.
Paulina Zalitsky wouldn't say anything?
Right, and I've had an agreement with Mr. Weinswag, her husband, in which I can discuss their progress with the site, but will only report publicly when I have their permission. And now is a portion of our most recent discussion this past week on the record for broadcast, and it includes the surprise of Paulina Zalitsky joining this interview.
Wow. Okay.
Is there any thing that you can say on the record for radio this morning that I could do some kind of an update?
For the record, you can say that the Center for Marine Archaeology and Anthropology at the Cuban Academy of Sciences is currently analyzing video data which we have from the perimeter of the site from megalithic stones. They're working on inscriptions that they have detected on these stones, and they are analyzing them at this time.
And what are the estimated sizes of these stones?
The estimated sizes of these stones, they're roughly, they could be roughly about 2 by 5 meters.
2 by 5.
Very large stones.
And
that's about 6 feet by 15 feet, 16 feet, something like that.
And you mentioned possibly the same kind of look as the perimeter stones at Stonehenge, that kind of looking rectangular?
Yeah, the same kind of stone that you see on Easter Island, in Stonehenge. Very large and smooth and light-colored. That bear no relationship to the surrounding ecology, and also there's evidence of smooth cut and fit.
Smooth
cut and fit. That is one on top of another. As if it were a basis of a pyramid or a large building.
And on those stones, where are the possible inscriptions? Up, like top or bottom or middle or?
Well, they're not anywhere specific on the stones. These inscriptions, they could be in the middle of the stones, in various parts of the stones, across. One thing we found, the anthropologists found, was an American cross. It's a Central American cross.
Is that where two lines are crossed perpendicular to each other with anything special on the ends? Or?
No, they're not two lines. They're two oval shapes crossing each other. Yeah.
Two sort of long ovals crossing each other the way a cross crosses.
Yeah, like a cross crosses, only the shape, not a single line. It's a flattened circle.
Do these, so far, from what you've seen on the video, do they seem to be inscribed into the stone like a quarter of an inch or a half an inch, or do you have any sense of how deep?
I can't tell really. We don't. They're limited lighting and limited perspective as well, because of the. We had technical problems with the ROV that we couldn't...
It's really dark at a half mile down, isn't it?
Well, there's no light at all.
Yeah.
Except what we provided.
And so you're limited in only what you can get in that light in front of you. And
that's okay. We have good lighting now, and we have a low light camera to add to our two or three other cameras that we have there as well. To our zoom camera, we have several cameras that work down there, and we have good lighting. So there's no reason. There was a lot of debris in the water at that time, created by a strong current, probably plankton.
When do you think you're going to be able to go down with all the cameras and everything functioning?
Well, hopefully, if we get all our systems back together again within the next 2 months, and we get a break in the weather.
And the museum that's trying to analyze these carved inscriptions on the stones you've seen so far, have you had any indication that they think it matches any known ancient script?
No, we don't have any conclusions yet. They're still in process. The analysis is still in process.
Have they made any comment about them? The symbols or the carvings?
Greek-like inscriptions.
Greek-like?
Well, not hieroglyphic type inscriptions.
Hieroglyphic meaning sort of like Egypt.
I said the lettering is Greek-like.
Okay, the lettering is Greek-like, but there's also...
Hold on, just a minute. Just a minute. Why don't you talk to my boss?
Oh, okay, I'd love to. Thank you.
Her name is Polina Zalewski.
All right.
Hi, Linda.
Hello. I'm so happy to meet you on the phone.
Yes, thank you. I was overhearing my husband, and I don't want you to make any bad mistakes like saying Greek, okay?
All right.
Because it's not Greek. It has the same tendency in lining, but it's not Greek. We don't know what it is. Academy of Sciences are deciphering it.
Right. It has some resemblances in lettering to Greek, but it is not Greek. It is not Greek. And there are some like pictographs that would fall into the hieroglyphic category as well.
Yes, and symbology as well. There are different signs, more like of American nature. Similar signs that they found in Central America on pyramids and stone delineation of the structures also suggest pyramidal type or American pyramidal type, not Egyptian pyramidal type.
Okay, and you mean by the glyphic symbols that would be found in Mesoamerican pyramids?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that cross that's made of ovals crossing each other, that would be an example?
That's an example. That's correct. And this type of cross is called American cross. And we find it out in Cuba in a variety of caves all around the island. They're very ancient. They're pre-Columbian, thousands of years before Columbus.
And so those...
As you know, Cuba has submerged 3 times.
Cuba has...
history of formation of islands.
Okay, so Cuba has gone under the water 3 times?
Yes.
And in caves underwater around the island, the American cross has been found carved in
yes,
the cave?
and other symbology, other cosmic type depiction. Yes. And you find it in Cuban caves around the island, really, not only in the south, but also in the north. And those caves are underwater caves, yes. And just one cave I know of in Isle of Youth is on land that has this type of symbology as well.
And when archaeologists have studied the carvings in the caves in Cuba, have they been able to match those symbols and those glyphs to any other pre-existing known language?
They're trying to match it to Central American. But each is distinctive on its own, right? It's very difficult to say that Central American ancient symbology is identical to this. It's not identical. It's similar but not identical.
Now, after hearing about the symbol of crossed ovals and mysterious lettering, I began my own search. I called the Archaeology and Anthropology Department at the University of Pennsylvania, which has one of the finest collections of Olmec, Mayan, and other Mesoamerican artifacts of the world. And this weekend, I spent several hours searching the library's rare books of Mayan and Mesoamerican glyphs, and I could not find a single cross of ovals until I opened up a book called The Language of the Sea Peoples. There, in a section comparing hieroglyphs from the Minoan island of Crete with hieroglyphs known as Linear Sea language used by an ancient Minoan culture called Luvian, I found it. You can see the symbol in its Linear Sea context right from the book at my website, www.earthfiles.com.
We've got a link up right now.
Go to the headlines page and scroll down to the top story, and there you will also see some photographs that Paulina Zalitsky sent me. Now, I also found a more complicated crossed oval symbol in Assyrian hieroglyphics. That's there, and I sent both of those symbols to Paulina Zalitsky for comment, and she emailed back 2 color photographs that she had taken inside a Cuban cave that included yet a different cross symbol, which you can see in my earthfiles.com report. She said that her photographs are from Cuban caves that scientific community people believe belong to what they call the Sea People. Now, how would an ancient Minoan symbol end up a half-mile down amid other apparent megalithic structures off the western tip of Cuba? I took that question to the editor-in-chief of Ancient American magazine, Frank Joseph. Frank has studied the end of the Bronze Age around 1200 BC, which is 3,200 years ago. And after we come back from this upcoming break, Art, we will learn why he thinks that the Oval Cross could link to Atlantis an astonishing new scientific evidence that a global catastrophe did happen in 1200 BC.
Oh, man, here we go. All right. Oh, my God, what a story, Linda. All right, stay right there. So, Greek-like hieroglyphics, underwater, inscriptions underwater on the stuff we've been talking about. They've got it with cameras. That's the big news. We'll be right back.
I've had nothing but bad luck since the day I saw the cat at my door. So I came into you.
All right, this is such a big story that Linda should know that the Earth Files website, according to everybody fast blasting me, is down.
Really?
And so maybe you could, well, yeah, it's getting slammed, Linda. So maybe you could explain to everybody roughly what the symbols look like. Can you give a graphic description?
Yes. Think of a oval that is narrow.
Okay.
And you've put one on the vertical axis, and you put an identical oval on the horizontal axis, the way you would a cross, except these are crossing ovals.
Wow, okay.
And exactly that is a symbol in the Luvian Linear Sea language. A very, very unusual Linear Sea is very rare, and apparently those people were antecedents in Minoan Crete, and you're going to hear a lot more about this.
Okay, we don't know what it means, do we?
You're going to hear some speculation, perhaps, from Frank Joseph, because he has been editing Ancient American magazine for some time, doing tremendous amounts of research for 21 years into the Bronze Age, and he has authored a 1998 book entitled Atlantis in Wisconsin, That is a whole other sub-bar story, and you will hear him discuss a part of that in the time that we're going to go forward. And in another new book about to be released, he has gone into the Edgar Cayce work. The title of this new book that will be in bookstores the 1st of December is Edgar Cayce's Atlantis and Lemuria. And a third book that he will release in 2002 is called The Destruction of Atlantis. Frank has devoted more than 2 decades to studying physical evidence of a global Atlantean culture which he believes was destroyed in a worldwide catastrophe in 1200 B.C. And in his September to October issue of Ancient American Magazine, there is a brief article entitled U.S. Navy Atlantis Cover-Up ? It says that on September 7th this year, a team from Spain and the United States looking for oil were, quote, 250 miles southwest of the Azores, equipped with a bath escape and 2 submersibles, reaching a 90-kilometer ledge with a central temple supported by 3 stands of 9 pillars, about 3 feet in diameter, supporting a flat stone roof about 20 feet wide and 30 feet long. Quoting from this report, there are the remains of 5 circular canals and bridges, plus 4 rings of structures like the temple in between. This is roughly 2,800 feet deep in the mid-Atlantic trench and is stable at this time, unquote. Frank Joseph and I are still trying to confirm this report, but that depth of 2,800 feet is around the half-mile depth in the Cuban site. And this weekend, I asked Frank about the crossed oval symbol in the Linear C language of the Luvian.
All right, here we go.
The Luvians were people who were about the same as the Trojans. They lived on what is now Turkey. They were either an ally of the Trojans, a close ally during the Trojan War and before, or else they were in fact Trojans. Some Luvian script supposedly has been found in Italy, and they think that is an important link between the Etruscans and Asia Minor, or what is now Turkey. And the Luvians were what do you call maritime people, very proficient at sea.
And this crossed oval symbol of theirs, related to what is lettered as LU, is also goes across in all of the columns in comparison to the other languages where the symbols appears to mean star.
A star, yeah, but maybe. Well, that LU that's repeated, that's like they're identifying themselves. That this is the Luvians. The VNs. That's just an English convenience, but they might probably call themselves like the Lu if you were to pronounce it in their language. So it's very, very interesting. That whole cultural context is Atlantean. Because the Atlanteans were plugged into the Trojans. The Trojans themselves had a story of Atlantis. Their founder was Dardanus, who came from an Atlantis, Electra, when she was sinking into the sea. This is very complex, highly thinly woven stuff,
Well, can you please share the story from the Trojan point of view about Atlantis?
The Trojans were a people who built their city around 3000 B.C., and they chose that spot at the Dardanelles because it was a very valuable place for trade between the East and the West. You had access then to the Black Sea. Whoever controlled the Dardanelles could control trade, and so Troy over time became a very wealthy city. And the story, the myth of Dardanus is that he was born on an island far away to the west. His mother was Electra, E-L-E-K-T-R-A, Electra. the name of the island that Atlantis was on. She was the daughter of Atlas, and her mother was Pleione. This is getting really...
Well, this is very similar to what Plato talks about.
And Pleione was the sea goddess who produced what is known as the Pleiades. And Pleiade means daughter of Atlas, which is Atlantis. That's what Atlantis means.
Pleiades means daughter of Atlas?
Pleiades means daughter of Atlas.
Wow.
It is a poetic way of saying that this is on Atlantis.
But the fact that there could have been an Atlantis that had bases that spread all the way from west of the Straits of Gibraltar that might include the Azores, the Canary Islands, going across the Atlantic, is what begins to emerge as maybe a greater truth than one single island.
Right. Now, the relationship between Atlantis and Troy is not the same as the relationship between, say, Atlantis and Yucatan, for example, where they had an allied kingdom. I mean, they really owned Yucatan, or they would own parts of Ireland and Spain. That was really plugged in tight to the Atlantean Empire.
How far back would you put this, since Plato says, going through Solon and in the Critias, 9,000 years prior to their discussion, and that would place it at about 11,500, wouldn't it?
No, that's another story altogether, but my colleagues and I have worked very hard, and since the 1980s, on the subject of the dates, and those dates are a mistake, that was a mistake in translation. The Greeks used a calendar very similar to ours. They used a solar calendar of about 365 days, a standard solar calendar. The Egyptians used a minimum of 5 different calendars, and including the solar calendar. Their priests and their holy places where they had the story of Atlantis, which was at a holy place called the Temple of Knife, that's Sais in Egypt, they used a lunar calendar. We conclude, after all this, that the priests at Sais, when he said 9,000 years, he is talking about lunar years and not solar years. There is abundant evidence to show that's exactly what he was saying. And the Greeks, when they heard this, they thought, oh, years. They're thinking solar years. And so when Plato is, all of the numerical values in the Critias and the Timaeus, especially the Critias, are totally inflated beyond reality. They do not work with the description that Plato gives. Plato describes a late Bronze Age citadel or city. There was a huge gap in knowledge between Plato's and Solon's time and what happened in Atlantis, because we now know that when the Bronze Age stopped suddenly around 1200 BC, that for the next 400 years at least, there was a period of profound dark age. There was no more writing. There was no more building of cities. The population of the world had decreased phenomenally. There was widespread burning. The entire Black Forest of Germany was incinerated. Not virtually, but every known archaeological site in the Near East and Asia Minor were burned. It is now understood that there was a major catastrophe of which Atlantis was only a small part, that whipped around the world in a band, literally from about Iceland to, say, the middle of North Africa, that whipped around the world. It affected North America, went right through the Pacific. There was a symposium of archaeoastronomers back in 1997, not New Age people at all, in England, in which they found that there was probably the greatest, no, not probably, certainly the greatest natural catastrophe human beings ever witnessed around 1200 BC. And that was when 2 or more comets, including Halley's Comet, converged in the skies over Earth and showered the world with a barrage of asteroids and meteors that pushed human beings to extinction. And Atlantis was especially hard hit because there are two Swedish physicists, Larsen and Franzen, who established in 1997 that several asteroids, now I'm talking about meteorites, asteroids, several asteroids collided in the eastern Atlantic, precisely in the location of Atlantis. And that is why we can explain why an island the size of Atlantis, which was 6,000 square miles, it was not a continent, but it was a big island, but it was destroyed. I mean, if you have an island out in the middle of the water and it's hit by several nuclear blasts at once, the chances of that thing being around are slim.
And what you mean is that the impact of these breaking or colliding asteroids would have been equivalent to atomic bomb forces hitting on the island.
Probably H-bomb forces.
Yeah.
And they didn't even have to hit the island. The island itself was part of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which is a very unstable area of the planet geologically. You could have an asteroid collision hundreds of miles away, but if it hit the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, that's the end of that island.
So the brief article that you have in the September-October issue of Ancient American about a Spanish oil research group being in the Azores and finding down 2,800 feet 9 columns supporting some kind of a stone slab roof, that it might literally connect to there having been some kind of structure there in this 1200 BC time frame.
Yeah, I think so. I think it works out real well. Unfortunately, I've not been able to verify that report any more than you've seen, but I would bet that it was part of the 1200 BC destruction because it was so massive at that time. We know, for example, that many parts of the world, like Britain and Germany, lost 9/10 of their human population all at once. So we're dealing with a massive, almost an extinction, a human extinction in various parts of the world all at the same time. And I think that that's entirely possible. That would explain also perhaps how this structure that's now found off of Cuba is where it is. We understand that possibly it was part of a much larger complex. I'm beginning to think that what they're finding there was something much larger originally, and that what they're finding now is just really a small part, a remnant. It was perhaps on a kind of a shelf which sank vertically. That's not impossible. Things like that have known to happen before in the Atlantic, and that this part remained upright, and that's what they're finding.
Art, until I interviewed Frank Joseph this weekend, I had not heard about this Cambridge, England conference on natural catastrophes during Bronze Age civilizations that was held in 1997, and the proceedings were released the following year. And they have a website, which I don't know if we would bring that website down, but I'll give it on the air. It's www.knowledge.cis/SIS/CAMBC.HTM. And there you will see all of these papers. And the reason why I thought I would give that out on the air is this, what you have just heard Frank Joseph describe, is a summary from this gigantic series of reports that were put together after this conference at Cambridge. And what I asked Frank was, how could there be this kind of evidence of a major catastrophe in 1200 BC, and we don't hear about it?
Damn right. Like our own Navy telling us, for example.
Yeah, and he said that it mystifies him because the information is there, scientists know it, and here it is now beginning to emerge as being so relevant and important to the Atlantis, possibly Atlantis.
Linda, there is no question about the fact that our Navy, which surely patrols the waters in and around Cuba, for example, and elsewhere, would absolutely have to know about this.
Yeah.
The Russian Navy would have to know about this. They've been in Cuban waters for a long time now.
And in that report that was sent to Frank Joseph that he put in the September-October Ancient American issue, the person who sent it said, and I'll read a little bit more beyond what I said before, we were there on a research project for the Spanish government about a week, but we were chased off the spot yesterday by Navy ships.
Oh.
Yes, and when they tried to send out the images from the underwater 9 columns, according to this report, which we're trying to find a person to talk with directly, they said their effort to get images out were jammed. Now, could it be that it is a normal, just because the Navy is doing an exercise, it may have been an honest and inadvertent deflection? That's what we don't know.
Wouldn't be my first guess.
Yeah, and they are using the term in this report jamming. But why? What is so dangerous about our learning that the world did not evolve the way that we have been taught?
Oh, Linda, you're answering your own question.
Well,
think about this. What's so dangerous about telling everybody that it didn't happen the way they've been telling us for all these years? Come on. It changes everything. It changes everything. Linda, we're here at the top of the hour. Hold on, all right?
We got more after.
Yeah, I understand. Oh, my God. Is this interesting stuff, or what? A worldwide catastrophic event 1,200 years before Christ that buried civilizations that existed before ours. Now, they not only have side-scan sonar rather, but now they've got photographs of symbols a half a mile below the ocean. I'm Art Bell.
Riders on the storm.
I see a lot of comments blasted to me on computer, and I thought John's in Baker City, Oregon was short, sweet, and to the point with regard to what this will do. He just said the information will upset the entire culture. Good. And it does have that, certainly it has that prospect, and that also could be an answer to why we haven't been told by those who we know it's there, Linda. I can't imagine any other answer that makes sense. Can you?
Well, I'll give you another perspective. I talked with our archaeologists and anthropologists in Harvard, University of Pennsylvania, and other universities about this, and the reaction was unanimous. It cannot be, because nothing could be a half mile down.
Yeah.
That the lowest that the oceans have been since the Ice Age is 400 feet below where they are now, not 2,200 feet. And when you say, well, there could be seismic activity or earthquake activity or a catastrophe that might have sent a portion of something straight down into the ocean, the response has always been, but everything would be broken up and there would be nothing to find. Well, stone and large stone might not break up, floating down in the water.
That's right.
It depends. And what I'm trying to describe is that there is I'm going to call it an academic straitjacket, and that there are people, even like Dr. Ebert at the University of Pennsylvania, who is doing pioneering, groundbreaking work right now in Turkmenistan. And he found that there are large, they call them oval states, where there is also a mysterious language carved on a stone that they found in the carbon layer that they could date at 2300 BC. That's 4,300 years ago. And that means that writing was already in place then, and the Turkmenistan site is now rivaling anything in Samaria. Now, this has been happening also this year in many other places. And one of the most mysterious cultures on Earth are known as the Etruscans. And 2,500 years ago, they lived in a region of Italy known as Tuscany. No one knew who they were or where they came from, and the Etruscans were very skilled sailors and craftsmen, and they carved in stone blocks, columns, and other artifacts in a language that no one to date has ever been able to translate. It resembles Greek, but it is not Greek. And here I would like you to listen to Frank Joseph speculating about the letters that Paulina Zalitsky was trying to describe that are on the underwater stones off Cuba.
All right, here we go.
I haven't seen what they found down there. It sounds like if it's something that looks Greek but isn't Greek, my bet would be that it's Etruscan. And I'm not saying that the site underwater is an Etruscan site. That's probably unlikely. The Etruscans did not build things that look like Teotihuacan, that's for sure. But the Etruscans, where did they get their written language? That's possible that what we're looking at in Etruscan is a variation of the Atlantean language. We don't know what the Atlantean written language looks like, but it appears to have been the precursor of not just Greek, but other written languages in other parts of the world. So it's possible that if they look to Etruscan, they might be able to find some similarities. That's not much of a help, though. Even if they identify it as Etruscan, they won't be able to read it because the Etruscan written language has not yet been deciphered. They've gotten some names off of it and little snatches of things, but the language itself is still... It's really bizarre because it's a Greek-type written language, but the language itself is more like Turkish or something. It's really very perplexing. The Etruscans, however, are far more directly connected with Atlantis because Plato, in his discussion of Atlantis, mentions the Etruscans specifically as having been an outpost of Atlantis. That the Atlanteans came to western Italy and set up their state there and intermarried with the people and sort of created what became known as the Etruscans.
Now, from the work you have done on Atlantis research, and I think it's fair to say you're convinced that Plato's description and Herodotus of this Atlantean civilization, that it really did exist. What do you know about the Atlantean culture in that period of 3000 to 1200 BC based on what you've studied?
What I can tell you is that the Atlanteans who developed on an island outside of the Straits of Gibraltar developed an extremely powerful sea civilization, as it were. They were great seafarers. Plato describes the Atlanteans as great seafarers and great miners. And that works out extremely well with the copper mining that took place in North America. I'm not going to get into that, but there was a major copper mining enterprise which involved a minimum of 500 million tons of raw copper being removed and disappearing during that time period, and I believe that the Atlanteans fit the bill for that.
And this was the 5,000 mines in the northern peninsula of Michigan that are each about 60 feet deep.
Well, the average depth is probably more like 20 feet deep for the pit mines, but there were many pit mines that were excavated through solid rock 60 feet down. So whoever did that obviously had a technology far beyond anything that was known to the Native Americans at that time, who were not interested in anything more than float copper they picked up off the ground. But this is, of course, one of the great, I don't really hate to use the word conspiracy, but it certainly is suppressed evidence that American scholars have known about for more than 100 years, that there was a huge copper mining enterprise in upper Michigan that lasted from 3000 BC to 1200 BC, those magic dates again, in which a bare minimum of 500 million pounds of the world's highest grade copper was excavated and disappeared. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the world, the Bronze Age erupts, and bronze is only made through high-grade copper combined with zinc and tin. So I think that what Plato was talking about are these ancient copper miners who were able to mine through their tremendous technological development, and ship this huge, this prodigious amount of raw copper to Europe, where they became the merchants, the brokers, the copper barons of the ancient world, and that's what made them so phenomenally wealthy and powerful.
Well, an interesting possible discovery in this we'll call it underwater megalithic site that's under research is that in some of the sonar data, not the videotape, but the sonar data, there are some returns that suggest that there might be metal, like metal on the tops of some of the objects. Would the use of metal as sheeting on structures be something that would be associated with the research on Atlantis?
Well, now we are getting really close to the Atlantean realm. Plato tells us that the Atlanteans, at the height of their prosperity, to show off their wealth, would actually sheet their walls, their outer walls of the city, with great sheets of what he called aurichalcum. Aurichalcum means nothing more than high-grade copper, which didn't exist in Europe in large numbers in North America. So here were people who used a design technique, an architectural technique of including sheets of precious metal in their walls. And now we're finding this supposedly at a site underwater off of Cuba. I would say now we're beginning to narrow in on a cultural commonality.
Frank, where do you think all of this is headed?
I know exactly where it's headed. Sometime this century, the greatest archaeological find in history is going to be made when identifiable remains of Atlantis are going to be found. And the beginnings of that started in 1968 when they found the Bimini Road or the Bimini Wall, whatever they refer to it as. It's still highly controversial, but it was just the first. That place has been thoroughly established as artifactual and man-made. The structure in Cuba may be part of that. It's very possible that's part of it. But there are breadcrumbs on the trail, and the final discovery of Atlantis is going to be made because the technology now for underwater research is developing at such an extent that turning the oceans transparent, and what's under the oceans, which actually is hidden under the silt and so on. And I think a lot of Atlantis is probably buried not only under the water but under the silt as well. And that discovery is going to be made. That's where it's heading. I think that hopefully in our lifetime, but I would say definitely in the 21st century, Atlantis will be found. I am really confident that that's going to happen.
What happens to the academic world then?
It stood on its ear because the academic world has been demanding for the last 100 years that anybody who believes in Atlantis is somebody believes in fantasy. They don't know what they're talking about. It's very unscientific. Beyond that, they say that, of course, civilization began just 5,000 years ago very slowly in Mesopotamia between the Tigris and the Euphrates. Well, all that's got to be thrown out. We're going to be looking at something completely different now. And in other words, all of the textbooks, our entire concept of where we came from is going to have to be changed. But
yeah,
Linda, God, doesn't this verify so much of what some archaeologists have talked to us about with regard to the forbidden archaeology we've all heard about?
I think so. I've looked at that Appendix B in that big, huge forbidden archaeology that goes into what appears to be pieces of equipment and technology and all sorts of things going back maybe thousands and thousands of years. And one of the this whole issue about the copper mining in northern Minnesota and the fact that archaeologists have known that there was all of this copper out of what look like boreholes going into this northern peninsula of Michigan, and that they are very old, and that it is an example of something that relates to what Plato wrote about in the Critias so clearly. And it also, this little passage I'm going to read underscores, if you can sort of in your mind's eye, think about the colors and what I'm describing now from Plato in the Critias.
All right.
What a strange, but probably extremely beautiful place this was. First of all, think of a bullseye. think of multiple rings. The center was the temple of Poseidon, and as it went out, it went alternating from the center, water, land, water, land, water, land, in these big rings. And now I'm picking up from Plato. The stone they quarried beneath the central island all around and from beneath the outer and inner circles, some of it being white, some black, and some red. They wove a pattern of many of these colors by blending the stones for the sake of ornament so as to confer upon the buildings a natural charm. So now you've got three colors, red, white, and black. And they covered with brass, as though with a plaster, all the circumference of the wall which surrounded the outermost circle. And that of the inner one they coated with tin, and that which encompassed the Acropolis itself with orichalcum, which sparkled like fire. That is the raw, pure copper that Frank Joseph and others are convinced was mined from the northern peninsula of Michigan in North America.
Wow.
The royal palace within the Acropolis was arranged in this manner. In the center there stood a temple sacred to Poseidon, which was reserved as holy ground and encircled with a wall of gold. So you had metal surfaces, according to Plato, all around these rings of alternating water and land, and that everything was built of red, white, and black.
Linda, two questions. First of all, I guess the statement, don't you think it's a basic tenet or belief of humanity in general that we believe in our own survival? In other words, the ground we stand on, we simply don't question the fact that it could have all been different at one time, that continents could have disappeared, and any worldwide catastrophic event at any time in our history has got to mean there's at least a possibility that it could happen again, right?
Yes.
If it happens once, it could happen twice.
Yes, and in this absolutely important 1997 gathering at Cambridge in England, one of the things that is underscored as you look through the titles and the abstracts on these papers is they are saying that there were maybe 5 major events in a period going back maybe between even 2300 and 1200 BC, but that we're talking about things coming in some sort of a cosmic nature, cycles perhaps, this collision, think about this, a collision of comets that rain down around a band of the Earth, and as Frank was pointing out, depending upon the velocity and the size, we already today have all of these warnings and concerns about any kind of incoming asteroid, and it's measured that the impact is measured the way we would measure atomic bombs or hydrogen bombs.
That's because people feel this, Linda. Have you ever listened to Native Americans? They talk about comets. Comets having deep meaning for all of humanity. And a lot of what the Native Americans say would fit right in, piece for piece for piece, with what you're telling me right now. Yeah,
and when our government back in, I think it was like around 1990, 89, 90, somewhere in there, for the very first time, you started seeing those very first headlines about we need some kind of defense against asteroids.
That's right. That's right. Even the Catholic Church, Linda, has had all sorts of interest in what's going on in deep space and what might be approaching Earth, to the degree that they have pushed aside environmental concerns to get observatories built in places where nobody else could get them built. I mean, serious pressure from the Vatican to get this done because they're watching for something.
Yes, and all of us should be watching the skies and trying to get as much information as possible, not turning away from it, trying to understand what happened on this planet 1200 BC.
But Linda, it's
should be very relevant to now.
Linda, it's human nature to turn away from it. It's a basic tenet, a belief of ours that everything we know and think of around us is solid. And if it once wasn't solid, it might not be solid again. Linda, hold on. We're at the bottom of the hour. When we get back, I think I'll ask when this is going to really be breaking news in the mainstream press. I wonder how long they can keep this bottled up. Until you and I are gone? Until the next generation comes? I don't think they can wait that long. I mean, look at how it's breaking on this program. We'll be right back. One quick question I think I would like to ask. We heard some speculation that this story might not be really well known or thoroughly believed, I'm not sure how to say this, until perhaps another generation passes. However, with the work going on in Cuba by Ms. Zalitsky and company, it seems to me it might be known much sooner. Or will the academic community decide to simply ignore even hard evidence of this? Or do you think in our lifetimes, Linda, that all of this might hit the mainstream press thanks to National Geographic and what's going on in figures? It would have to come out of Cuba of all places. Maybe they just don't care that much about upsetting paradigms. Who knows? But Linda, could it break in our lifetimes?
Well, I'll tell you, Art, the National Geographic Society is so convinced about the seriousness of this underwater site that they tried in their contractual discussions with Paulina Zalitsky and Paul Weinsweig to basically tie up everything. National Geographic really wanted everything, and their negotiations broke down because of it. And as of this month, there are still discussions about what ADC Corp is doing. They have other contractual agreements both in Cuba and other places in Australia and Canada. And they are going forward. They are completely independent. They are not dependent upon National Geographic or anybody else. It's a very unusual position for them to be in. And right now, as Paulina and her husband said earlier in the interview, the only two factors they're really concerned about now and what's preventing them from showing the world the images, they want to do that, and that is the weather and equipment. She explained to me that part of the sea is especially treacherous, that it is extremely dangerous. It is where high winds blow all of the time, and they have problems when they've got wind on the surface and what it does as they go down. And they're trying to wait to do what they hope will be the definitive videotape with multiple cameras and lights within the next 2 months. So, and they have promised me that when we get to that point, and they are going to go down, they will share some images with me. And I will do a story next as soon as something is firm with images. So,
well, again, do you see a point where the mainstream press throws up its hands, courtesy of the investigation of National Geographic or Ms. Zalitsky or whatever, and comes out and says, "Oh my God, here it is, folks"? Do you see that happening, or do you see academia simply turning their backs?
I think that the general world media is going to be forced to have to deal with the facts in a story like this. If you have indisputable videotape of 90-degree cornered, we'll call them stones, they call Stonehenge the stones, but they are clearly have been carved. And if there's hieroglyphs and symbols and writing, it would be especially interesting if the writing turned out to match something of the mysterious Etruscan language. And it's 2,200 feet down, Art. You have to deal with this as a serious underwater archaeological discovery.
And this could surely occur not in our children's lifetime, but in our lifetime, and pretty doggone soon at that, actually.
Yes, I really do think that Paulina Zalitsky and Paul Weinsweig are expecting that they will be doing something public with this story in early 2002 with images. I think that's what they're building up for. And whether or not ABC Television, National Geographic, or whoever else wants to get into this, I think that we've got the problem that you can't get the world in an ROV down 2,200 feet. And you can't get the world down through the Cuban government. This is something that I have learned in the process of keeping up with this story. You have to have hundreds, it seems like, a lot of permissions. You have to have exactly the right people who give you those permissions in Cuba, or you don't do anything. And the fact that Paulina Zalitsky has been working as an ocean engineer and in construction on Cuba for many different phases of her life, she knows that culture, and she is able to operate in it. But you or I or somebody else, we can't, just because we want to go to Cuba and cover this story, it doesn't mean that we're going to be able to go down in the ROV or have access to it. And so suddenly it's a very small channel of the information coming through ADC Corporation, and they understand that. But they are also working with the Cuban Marine Museum. They are working with scientists there. Cuba is interested in this as a story that that government would be dealing with. So you have all of these different factors, but I have never had one sense that Paulina Zalitsky or Paul Weinsweig have any other goal but to report whatever it is that they can photograph and find when they've got it corroborated really well to the world. I think they want to do it. I certainly want to do it. And so it really is a story in which the pressure of fact is what's going to be at work here.
What a totally monstrous story. Linda, we're going to get phones, at least in the last hour, but I really would be remiss if I did not ask you the following. Don Robertson of Ventura, California writes, glad you're back. Please ask Linda Moulton Howe if there have been any new developments. After all, before the war, it was a giant story, in proving the Chilbolton Code, the face genuine crop formations, not hoax. Dr. Roger Lear has a friend that claims the code received at Chilbolton is genuine, and whoever sent it examined it from a three-dimensional aspect instead of the two-dimensional aspect it was set in 1974. This man is one of the world's foremost experts in the Human Genome Research Project, but wishes to remain anonymous as he works for a major lab with security restrictions. So, Chilbolton, I understand Dr. Levin Good has now examined some of the wheat from the formations. Is that correct?
That's right.
What do we know?
Okay. He got soil and plant samples from 3 formations in England. One was the gigantic Milk Hill, 787 feet in diameter, 409 circles. And the other was from the Chilbolton Face and Code, which I have a kind of funny, perhaps inspiring story about, that the day that Lucy Pringle went up in the air for the first time and photographed that it was a face, she got in touch with me. And I was working then over the next 2 or 3 days trying to figure out what can we do to get something that we could do scientifically. And on the day before the farmer cut the whole thing down. I stayed up all day and all night, literally, trying to find out who the farmer was, and nobody knew. Lucy didn't know. Nobody knew who actually controlled that wheat field next to the Chilbolton Observatory. And at what was 5 o'clock in the morning, East Coast time, 10 o'clock in England in the summer, I finally got a woman at an office that Charles Mallett had called and said, I think that we have found the farmer. And I've been through so many phone calls that were dead ends, and I made that call, 5 o'clock, sun coming up, and a woman answered, and she said very cheerily that this was the office, yes, of the farmer who owned and ran that wheat field, yes, and where was he? He was on the harvester in the field. And I gave the speech of my life, saying I was a reporter in Philadelphia trying to work on the science of the soil and the crops. Was there any possibility he had a cell phone? And she said yes. And she gave me the phone number, and I called it, and this man answered, and there was this roar of this harvester.
Oh, no.
And I said, are you, by any chance, in the Chilbolton field? He said, yes, I'm getting ready to harvest. And I gave the second speech of my life and asked him, begging, would he please preserve it for one day while we would get people out there to sample the soil and the plants. And at first he said no, and I kept on talking about why it was important, and finally he said, okay, you have until tomorrow morning.
Oh, my God.
Literally, I mean, that's how close this was. He was on the harvester getting ready to plow through them.
Oh, man.
So, you know, it shows that sometimes you persevere against all odds. It pays off.
Sometimes. I guess speeches have power, Linda. I mean, so who do you have go out? I mean, who went out?
Okay, Charles Mallett and his wife, Frances, who I've known ever since I worked on my book, Mysterious Lights in Crop Circles, bless their hearts. They went out, they sampled plants, they sampled soil, they took video, they took photographs, and we did get it to Dr. Levengood, the biophysicist in Michigan. And when his report came back, it's very interesting. I will start first with Milk Hill, because this is where he had remarkable changes across the board.
All right, folks. Again, that's the great big one, the 409 circles, yes.
The growth nodes were lengthened. They had expulsion cavities.
Oh, my.
Yeah, the cavities were even down to the microscopic level, and you can see photographs that Dr. Levengood took, a magnification of 40 power, at my website. It is a story that I filed October 27th.
Linda, stop and explain to everybody what an expulsion cavity is. What does that mean?
When, think in your mind of a wheat stalk that is growing up out of the soil,
right,
and about 3 or 4 inches above the soil there is a nodule in the stem, and about every 4 to 5 inches there will be another nodule, and it will end up being 4 of these nodules. They're called growth nodes, and at the top will be the wheat. And each of those growth nodes will have the most water in the stem. They are the growth nodes. Dr. Levengood hypothesizes from every work that he has done, every test he's done in labs now for about 8 years, working with microwave frequencies, that he can only reproduce what he finds in the crop formations, such as these expulsion cavities, when he exposes the plant to microwave energy.
Basically cooking them with microwaves.
Yes, but they don't cook. This is one of the remarkable things about crop formations. He has never, in all of these years, and maybe thousands of plants by now, he has never seen a cooked plant, but he has seen many of these expulsion cavities, which are the result
of some kind of energy, right?
From the water is being vibrated by the microwave energy, just like you would put coffee into a microwave oven to heat it up.
Now, that doesn't mean microwaves did it. It means that's the best way we can simulate it.
Well, yes, but it means microwaves were involved in the fields. That's a very important point. Yes, microwave energies are interacting with the plants and the soil.
So he's really locked it down to where he definitely believes it is microwave energy?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. He published this a few years back, and this is why the holes burst out in the growth nodes, because the water is vibrated up to a point that it can't go anywhere, and suddenly, like steam, it bursts out, and these are the holes. And when you go to earthfiles.com in the Real X-Files section, you will see this October 27th story of mine shows his own photographs of these expulsion nodes that he found all over the plants from Milk Hill. He found the nodes were also lengthened, and he has a photograph here of another very important part of Milk Hill, which is he discovered that the wheat seed weights from the inside the formation were significantly reduced compared to the normal control wheat samples that are taken outside the formation for comparison. But when the Milk Hill seeds were germinated under controlled laboratory conditions along with normal seeds from outside the formation,
right,
the Milk Hill plants had a 111% increase in the mean growth rate compared to the controls.
Wow.
This accelerated growth is something that he has seen right from the beginning of his research. Other people in Canada and different states in the United States and Europe, they have reproduced this. They find that seeds coming from inside formations when planted have accelerated growth compared to normal seeds.
Question for you, Linda. If you virtually cook a wheat with a microwave, does it then, when you take the seeds, exhibit the same accelerated growth characteristics?
Yes. He has.
It does. Oh.
He has, not only has he worked with this in the lab, he has now developed a patent using energy systems to accelerate growth rate.
Linda, is there any way in the world, and I'm sure there have been a lot of tests with regard to this, that anybody with boards and chains can produce this effect, no matter how they hop and jump and move around? Is there any, even one time, evidence that these kind of things have occurred with people with boards and chains?
Let me read from Dr. Levengood's own report, quote, "These pronounced growth differences are never observed under normal conditions. What we are observing here is that seeds from the formation samples that showed reduced seed weights are germinating and growing at faster rates than seeds from the sample sets taken outside the formation, and that microwave energies have to have been involved, not people's feet."
Whew. Well, that throws the whole thing wide open again.
Well, there's one more step here.
Yes?
He also found higher than normal deposits of magnetic material in the soil samples from Milk Hill.
You know, I heard that report from a number of people who were over there who took magnetometer readings, Linda, and they said they were anomalous all over the place. The magnetometer was jumping like crazy.
Well, down in the soil, and he's been finding this from Israel and Canada and Europe, that they, at a microscopic level, up to 700 times the normal soil in the world, that he's finding this magnetite. This is iron that will jump to a magnet, and it, for some reason, becomes concentrated in some of the soils in formations, which he continues to study. And in the Milk Hill Formation, compared to the soil outside the formation, there was, again, an unusual concentration of magnetic iron in the soil.
Did you say 700 times normal?
Yes, he has measured in some soils, in formations, up to 700 times an amount of magnetic iron compared to normal soil. And he hypothesizes that these magnetic particles are consistent with, and I'm quoting again from his report, the physics of forces that would include microwave energies on magnetic particles suspended within a rotating vortex system of ions.
Wow.
In other words, a spinning plasma, which would keep that word in mind
Plasma?
when we talk about Hedstone, Norway.
I heard your report on Dreamland Saturday, Linda.
It's a heck of a story.
Yeah, on the plasma. We'll get to that. Everybody.
When we come back, Chilbolton.
Yeah, that's right. Stay right there, everybody. Chilbolton, and you're going to want to hear about the plasma as well, and we will get phone lines open. Boy, talk about a night for breaking news, holy mackerel. I'm Art Bell, back in more ways than one with Linda Moulton Howe. As I said, coming up in a few moments, questions for Linda Moulton Howe, and boy, oh boy, what a lot of news tonight. Once again, here is Linda, and I think we were going to cover Chilbolton, Linda.
Right, and we can do it pretty briefly because Dr. Levengood did not find any lengthened nodes, no expulsion cavities, no seed weight changes, no increased growth rate, or greater concentration of magnetic iron in the soil of either Chilbolton formation, and the absence of those findings might mean that the source of the Chilbolton formations was not the same as Milk Hill. And Dr. Levengood and I talked about that. He said in the absence of the physical changes that he saw in Milk Hill, he cannot prove or disprove what happened at Chilbolton. One of the things that the phenomena has done from year to year is keep changing things, and that's one of the almost expectations we've had. And there also is the possibility that some human intelligence agency decided to do this. We don't know. It's just the bottom line is that the same complexity of changes in Milk Hill we did not find in either of the formations at Chilbolton. And when it comes to what is making Milk Hill and the other major mysterious formations over the last 12 or 15 years,
we still have no idea.
We get down to an issue of intelligence, a sense of intelligence that many people have had in the presence of the mysterious lights that are so commonly involved with the formations. And that ranges from the Dutchman who says that he thinks that the lights are angels to others who call them other dimensional frequencies. And what exactly that means, I don't know.
All right, Linda, I would love to take some calls. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to communicate with you. I gave my email address out, artbell@mindspring.com. Let's give yours out, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to have comments and questions about this.
Yes, thanks. My email is earthfiles@earthfiles.com, and the website is www.earthfiles.com.
All right, earthfiles@earthfiles.com. That is your email address.
Right.
All right. Linda, here we go. Let's take some questions. First-time caller line, you're on the air with Linda Moulton Howe. Where are you, please?
This is Ken in Seattle.
Hello, Ken.
I have sent you a bunch of pictures over the years of Seattle contrails in a store called Area 51, and I've listened to you for years, but I wanted to ask Linda, I've got this wonderful Arizona magazine in front of me from September 1964, and the ancient manuscripts on American stone. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to get too far into it, but this man started in 1938 with the petroglyphs in Arizona, mm-hmm. and he spoke to an Aztec down there in 1938, and he said that the ancestors of the Aztecs came over routes in which they migrated. They marked all of their routes. Their forebears was the Nahatno tribes, who came from Atlantis, crossed overland to the valley of the Great Salt Lake. Later, they migrated from there to the valley of the River Gila, and that established their first capital. After living there several centuries, they moved on to the Mexican plateau. And they have wonderful examples of the petroglyphs from all over the world, in Greece and Mexico, and those similarities between them all.
Well, then there's a pretty good chance this really is connected, isn't there, Linda?
I think that if Frank Joseph were with us right now, that he could give us many examples of what he thinks is demonstrative hard physical evidence in the North American continent of these Atlantean outposts that were involved with mining and other things. And I think that there is another subcategory of story that will continue to be emerging over the next few years, and that is in the United States in several places, like in Ohio and down in the Grand Canyon. There are discoveries of everything ranging from masks and really exotic pottery and glyphs that seem to tie directly to a Mesopotamian origin. What are they? Why are they here? And why is it that people who have tried to report about some of these very odd underground or in the canyon discoveries can't get anywhere with those reports? And Frank Joseph is working on a story right now that, depending upon how it continues to evolve with physical evidence, could be another one that may erupt in the next 2 or 3 years, establishing this Mesopotamian or Middle Eastern or even Egyptian connection to some outposts here in North America.
All right. Wild card line, you're on the air with Linda Moulton Howe and Art Bell. Good morning.
Good morning. This is Frank from Cleveland.
Yes, Frank. Hi.
Mr. Bell, Ms. Howe.
Hello.
I would like to know if you're familiar with the book called The Blue Book. Okay, with UFO and everything.
Yes, of course, sir.
Oh,
okay.
yes.
How about the face of Mars?
Oh, yes, sir. These are all things that have been constantly discussed here.
The connection with what we've been talking about, or what you have been talking about, as far as the 409 rings and everything. There's a definite connection with Atlantis, I think.
Well, there may be a connection with artifacts on Mars, if that's what they ever turn out to be. There's certainly reason to believe that there could be some sort of connection with very ancient artifacts on Mars and very ancient artifacts here. It's a stretch right now, but what you have heard tonight is not a stretch, and it's not something you have to reach out to believe. With the side scan and now the confirming photographic evidence. I don't know about Mars, Linda, but the big story is right here on Earth. What do you think?
Absolutely. And whatever we end up finding or not finding on Mars, there is a revolution right now on this planet that is redefining everything that we are and where we've come from.
I'm not sure the average person, and maybe a lot of my listeners, but I think the average person is not ready for this. And I think that's the answer to why the information has not been made public yet. Not in a, until Tom Brokaw says it, Linda.
Well, that's coming, I think, and it excites me to my core.
Me too.
It doesn't scare me at all. I'm excited by it, and I want to know everything I can learn.
I know, but you're a woman of science. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with our woman of science, Linda Moulton Howe.
Yes, I'm listening to 1200 WAI.
Oh, okay.
And my question for Linda is, in the discoveries, it talks about the shape of the cross, the symbol of the cross. Have you ever heard of anybody talk about the possibility of a connection with the Great Pyramid of Giza, and how the shape of the cross, and I don't know if you've heard of super logic before, but excuse me, where the shape of the cross represents where you have the multiple string dimensions, and so like from one dimension it would cross over into another dimension, and I'll get off the air. Thanks.
All right. Linda?
Well, a lot of things are going through my head. We're talking here about using the word cross, but it's ovals that are crossing over each other, so it's not really like a cross as I think people think about it in their mind's eye.
Sure.
And it's very interesting that in Plato, in the Timaeus, that he has a drawing that he put in there, and it is a vertical ring and a horizontal ring. And he was talking in that as a symbol that was representing in the Socratic dialogue that which would be sort of within and that which would be without, that which would have a stable center and that which would not. So whether the thinking behind these crossed ovals goes back to that time when there were a lot of concentrations on geometries and math and symbols for reasons that are not always clear or not. The cross idea itself, we're talking about a shape. What was in the minds of whether it was Atlanteans or the Etruscans who made the cross of the ovals is not clear. But Frank and I talked a great deal about what is known as solar cross or sun crosses, and they are in so many of the, whether it's Mesopotamian, Egypt, Asia, and these were usually lines or something crossed within a circle.
And so these may have been seafaring people, kind of like Kevin Costner's Waterworld almost. They may have been people born to the sea virtually, huh?
Clearly, if it was Atlantean, if this is where this is headed, we are talking about the way they made it around the world was that they had to build amazing ships that could go to all of these ports of call.
It's Waterworld. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Lynn Moulton Howe. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I heard that a long time ago, when the Earth was in its infancy, it had caverns that were full of water. They were like a blood vessel system that pumped through the Earth. It's like it was alive. And then what I understood is something crushed into us and kind of collapsed it. And that's why all the water came up. Have you ever heard of the book, When Worlds Collide?
Yes, by Velikovsky.
I was in high school and I saw it. It's a 4-inch thick book, After Worlds Collide.
Yes, Velikovsky felt that there had been catastrophic events in this solar system. And what's been interesting to me is this year I went to the Lunar and Planetary Conference in Houston, where so many scientists who work on NASA projects and JPL, and it was the largest gathering of scientists ever in the history of the Lunar and Planetary Conference. There were 1,100 scientists from around the world. And Mars and all of our solar system was under discussion with hundreds and hundreds of images, and one of the most interesting topics had to do with catastrophic events in this solar system. And in this SIS, this Cambridge conference that I referenced that was held in 1997, in one of the papers, there is a science journalist who was doing the open keynote address, and he said that observations made in the distant past may be far more accurate than we generally assume, and that because of the dangers from asteroids and comets, the Earth is not and never has been a safe place to live. He concluded with a quotation that many of us have heard before from George Santayana, and that is, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to relive it." So I think that this planet has been through all kinds of cycles of major catastrophes. We know the dinosaurs were wiped out in one that now has pretty much been proved to have been an asteroid that collided in the southern part of the United States between what would be the Gulf of Mexico and the Yucatan, which is a different event 65 million years ago from what they are postulating happened when comets literally collided at 1200 BC, which was only 200 years ago.
Here, here. Wild card line, you're on the air with Linda Moulton Howe. Good morning.
Hey, Art, great to have you back. This is Damien in Atlanta.
Hi, Damien.
Hey, Linda, I have a pretty big question for you. I know you were recently in a conference with Zachariah Sitchin in Arizona.
Yes.
And I was wondering, you said about the catastrophe that possibly around 1200 BC that would have sank possibly Atlantis or what's going on in Cuba. And I was wondering what kind of influence a big swirling celestial mass would have if it came in close proximity to Earth.
Well, in Zechariah's, his hypothesis that he's been working on for over 30 years from trying to translate from the cuneiform of the Sumerian civilization, he talks about a planet called Nebaru, which is supposed to be inhabited by these Anunnaki who set in motion us as a human species out of genetic manipulation, and were involved with mining operations and the generation of genetics on the planet. Now, if there was a planet, and the size of the planet would be a big question mark, but if there truly was an orbiting planet that would come through this solar system on a, let's say, 3,000 or 4,000 year cycle, or whatever the cycle is, astronomers would be able to detect perturbations all the way out to what is called the Oort cloud. That is this largely icy snowballs that ring our solar system, from which a lot of comets come.
In other words, it would leave fingerprints.
It would leave They would leave gravitational imprints on things already out there and could be detected. And if a planet tried to move through this solar system from someplace, it would begin to play havoc with orbital mechanics. So right now, I think it's a pretty fair statement that, as far as I know, there are no astronomers anywhere, and this is a global scientific world now. It isn't like you can easily suppress something like perturbations in the orbits of our planets. Astronomers will know, and they will report. I've talked with many astronomers from around the world. They are a very straight group, and they will report if they would detect something like that.
Still, though, with what Zachariah says about mining operations, Linda, we're coming up to a break. You must be somewhat struck by the similarities
with the Atlanteans.
This gold-colored metal, Linda. Hold on. We're going to take a break here at the bottom of the hour, and we'll be back with more Big News Morning from Coast to Coast AM. I'm Art Bell, from the high deserts in Pahrump, Nevada, to the world. Once again, from Philadelphia, here's Linda Moulton Howe, where it's getting late, coming up on 5 a.m. in Philly, I guess. Huh, Linda?
Yeah, I was thinking how gorgeous it was 2 nights ago watching all of those meteors, and tonight it's raining.
Lucky. Yeah. All right, here we go. First time caller line, you're on the air with Linda Moulton Howe.
Hey, this is Adam calling from Upland, California.
Hello, Adam.
Listening on KFI AM 640 out here.
Yes, sir.
Earlier in the program, you're talking about how with the discoveries in Cuba, you expected there to be these vast social and economic and political changes. I'm not quite sure how I see that that'll necessarily happen. I see that people look at this and be just stunned and just amazed by these discoveries, but I don't see economies falling or political structures crumbling.
No, I don't think economies will fall, but certainly there would be pretty big social change.
Academic books will change.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, but I don't see how that'll necessarily change the lives of the individual person. I mean, I can sort of liken this to maybe the discovery of creationism versus evolution, and that the science seems to point at evolution, but people still go on with their lives
Oh,
regardless.
yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I'll accept that as the magnitude of change. You bet.
So I mean, other than a scientific point of view and just a general curiosity point of view, will this necessarily change the world?
I think it will, sir. Linda, you may wish to comment more, but religious institutions, our basic thoughts about who we are and where we have come from and where mankind began and where it changes all that. I mean, that's pretty non-trivial.
Yes, and at the conference, the Earth Mysteries Conference in Arizona that we were just talking about before the break concerning Zecharia Sitchin, Robert Bauval was also there from France. He now lives in England, but he has written so much on Egypt and the Cheops and his theory that the pyramids, the Great Pyramid and the other pyramids, were laid out like the Belt and Orion. And there is this connection between these megalithic cultures and the stars. And even though in his work he publicly has shied away from the question of non-human, whereas Zecharia Sitchin has really opened up a lot of people's, I think, minds anyway, about the possibility that there was a cohabitating non-human civilization on this planet for some period of time that was involved with its own work and its own goals while it taught and did all kinds of things on this planet. And that now you come to a question that could the Atlantean civilization, with all of its abilities to mine copper from, say, the peninsula of Michigan with making these 20 to 60-foot boreholes through rock, how did they do that? And could there be the possibility that there may be some connection between Zecharia Sitchin's translations of cuneiform involving this clearly, from his point of view, a non-human cohabitating presence on the Earth? Where did these begin to overlap? How much of the Earth's history is disguised? That's what I'm trying to find out.
Totally non-trivial. Wildcard Line, you're on the air with Linda Moulton Howe. Good morning.
Good morning, Art. This is Brad in Paulsville. Listen to you on KOMO 1000. It's good to hear your voice again.
Thank you.
Thanks for being there. Linda, I have a question. If we could just for a moment go back to the grains. On those nodal points, isn't it true that sometimes it's just the lower nodes that are affected?
In terms of the expulsion cavities, yes. Usually it is the one that is that 4 inches above the ground I was talking about. Sometimes up to the mid-stem. Usually the upper nodes are lengthened only and don't have expulsion cavities because the stiffest cells, if you want to put it that way, the most hardened cells are on the lower two nodes. The upper are more flexible. But that doesn't mean that Dr. Levengood has not found expulsion nodes in all the cavities in some cases.
Okay, that's interesting, but there's one other question, and I'll go away real quick, like, excuse it, Art. I've read somewhere that if there had been a Nibiru, that it would be at an extreme angle to the plane of the ecliptic, which might mean that there would be a limited contact with the solar system's gravity well at 2 to 4 points as the object orbited the Earth at, say, a 45 to a 43 degree angle. Okay? If it's on a 3,600 year trek, it would also be speeding up as it approached the sun and slowing way down as it got out farther.
I've seen the drawings also. In fact, Zecharia was showing that and many other things at this conference. And I guess my only problem is, what is the size of this? And if it is on a return from whenever it came through, assuming, I think there's a suggestion by Zechariah that he thinks that there is some kind of an imminent return. It would seem to me that we would have more indication of that astronomically. But we're into an area where the orbital mechanics of a solar system and some kind of a planet that had a very odd looping orbit is something that I'm not qualified really to discuss in terms of exactly what that would mean. And very few people are, and all I know is that if there was a perturbation at the outer edges of our solar system, we'd know it now in November of 2001. So I'll report, I promise you, I'll report the very first I ever learn of anything unusual happening in the orbital mechanics of the solar system.
All right, good, Linda. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Linda Moulton Howe. Hi. Hello?
Hi,
Hello, where are you?
New Orleans.
New Orleans, okay.
I'm in my mid-60s, and I heard rumors from a child of all kind of things in the Gulf. 3 of them have been proven this spring and summer. But one of the rumors I'm still waiting for is that we were told there was a pyramid in the Gulf.
A pyramid in the Gulf?
Now, they had told us there were a lot of whales, and this spring and summer they proved that. They found over 300 whales in the Gulf.
Ma'am, who is doing the talking with you or the prophesizing?
It was on WWL-TV, Channel 4 here in New Orleans. It's the sister station of what I'm listening to on there, WSMB.
Isn't that interesting?
The University of Texas was mapping the Gulf for all, and they found, if you put it on land, they say it'd be like Grand Canyons down there with violent storms, and they found blue octopus and other weird creatures. They found a sunken German submarine that was, it had torpedoed the Robert E. Lee that sunk, and what you call naval ships, when they threw those canisters over the side, they did find a sunken German U-boat. They won't tell the exact location except it's off the mouth of the Mississippi River.
Ma'am, is this supposed to be from a news program or from
WWL-TV. Bill Capo was the reporter. We saw the films. We saw the picture of the sunken German U-boat. We saw the blue octopus. We saw the whales. The whales were with the University of Mississippi.
And so you're saying that somebody else took all of these various science reports and said that these were adding up to something?
Well, as a child, we were heard that there was a pyramid, offshore workers, shrimpers.
That's fascinating. Linda, it's not actually that surprising, if you think of the Gulf and where it is.
And the closeness to basically the Yucatan and Mesoamerica.
Precisely. So that would bear some investigation, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Linda Moulton Howe. Hello. No, I'm sorry, I didn't push the button. West of the Rockies, now you're on the air. Hello.
Hi. This is Brad from California. I'm listening to KFI 640.
Yes, sir.
And I have a kind of there's a book I need to tell you about. It's called The Ancient Atlantic by L. Taylor Hansen. Have you ever heard of that?
Not specifically.
It's reprinted now by the Stell Group in the Midwest somewhere, Stelle. And it's very interesting. It talks about the fact that the oceans used to be less deep. And so I've been doing some research on it. I went to Scripps Institute Library, and I got all the maps they have of the underwater, the exits of various rivers like the Hudson or the Los Angeles River or the Amazon. All of these rivers continue out underwater in the ocean way deep, down to 3,000 feet. They're still carving out submarine canyons. And oceanographers don't have any explanation for this other than they call it turbidites, which supposedly dug out these undersea canyons. But it looks exactly like they were eroded when they were on the surface. So they're like 3,000 feet down. You still have the L.A. River running out towards Catalina.
And are you thinking that that kind of phenomena could carve channels that would be confused with megalithic structures?
No. I'm saying that everybody's thinking that this area off of Cuba sank. What I'm saying is that there's a lot of things down about 2,000, 3,000 feet that was the surface of the ocean. Nobody goes back far enough. I don't think. In other words, there's cycles for.
But there are some things we know about. I mean, the Ice Age, for example, we know that the change there, right, Linda?
Yes, and it was an average of 100 feet down lower than it is now, but there were parts of the Earth that were 400 feet exposed land compared to today.
But that was the most we know of.
Yes, but not in the thousands, and certainly not a half mile.
What's the thinking on how much time, Linda, would be involved with regard to something down 2,200 feet? Is there any even reference for it? Can they make guesses?
In terms of what would happen on the surface and how long it would take for it to settle down and all of that?
Yes.
I don't think that anybody has gotten their minds around this kind of stuff. To tell you the truth, I really don't, because when I have talked with people who, they're experts. I mean, they are the creme de la creme in their field, whether it is Mayan glyphs or other parts related to archaeology and anthropology. When you come to deep underwater, you will find that the conversation stops rather rapidly, and that many will say, it's just been in the last 10 years that technology is getting us clear pictures of places we've never been able to see before underwater. And so you have people who have evolved their careers basically on land research. The water and underwater is an area that is still so unexplored, and that there's something, I think, that is threatening to what we'll call it meat boxes in academia, where everything has been ordered and the books have long been published and printed. And when I was down at the University of Pennsylvania, for example, there were books that I wanted from a bibliography that really seemed important, and the reference librarian said, those are buried in boxes in the XX library where nobody ever goes because nobody ever looks at those books. And I said, but they could be very important and relevant to today. And she said, but to who? Okay, if you are absent new knowledge, you don't even understand the value of books that exist.
All right. Wild card line, you're on the air with Linda Moulton Howe and Art Bell. Good morning.
Yes, hi, Art.
Hello.
Hi, welcome back. Glad to have you back on your show.
Thank you.
Hi, Linda. Hi, this is Bill in West Hartford, Connecticut. I'm an amateur astronomer, amateur scientist, and I have a question for you about the crop circles and about the lights that have been observed by a few people, and you mentioned the hypothesis of what they might be, these certain lights that seem to have expelled the nodes on the crop circles as well as made the crop circles in general. My question is, on the one hand, you say that a possible answer may be they may be wavelengths or frequencies from some kind of another dimension, whatever that may be. That's a correct scientific statement. Then you say they may be angels. Well, I don't know what an angel is. How can that be a scientific statement?
I didn't hear Linda say that at all.
No, I'm not saying that. I was describing that people who have been investigating crop formations have reached as far as a Dutchman, I said that, a Dutchman in Holland who says that the lights he has seen he thinks are angels, to other people who say that they think they're dealing with dimensional frequencies. This is not Linda Howe's opinion. This is the opinion of people who have encountered these lights.
It's a range of opinion.
Yes, but if you're an amateur astronomer, I am too and have been since I was a child, and I love science and hard facts. When it comes to a breakthrough in new information concerning the mysterious lights that seem to have characteristics very similar to what has been seen in England and other places of the world associated with crop formations, we need to jump to Hesdalen Valley in northeastern Norway. And just in the last 4 weeks, a report has been distributed by Dr. Massimo Teodorani. He is an astrophysicist in Italy, and he joined with some colleagues in Italy and engineers in Norway to study this valley that has had these chronic, strange light reports for years and years. Well, they finally applied a lot of videotape camera and some spectroscopy and radar this year, and they have issued a report that is so extraordinary because the descriptions that the scientists are making, completely outside of any relationship to the crop formation phenomenon, are so similar to what has been videotaped and described if you go to England or you're in some place where there have been crop formations. And what they have concluded is that 95% of the many lights that they have now studied are, and this is the scientist's term, thermal plasmas. Biophysicist Levengood has said for the last several years that he is convinced that what is interacting with the plants in crop formations is a spinning plasma vortex.
Mm-hmm.
In the Hesdalen research, they have found that when they study the lights through various spectra, that they are seeing not a single light source, but they are many, they call them mini balls that make up and seem to be rotating around a center. Well, 2 years ago, a man named Don Fletcher from London was in Wiltshire, England. He was videotaping a beautiful formation.
Linda, we're coming to the end of the show.
Yes. And he got on videotape what appeared to be little lights rotating around a center light, which is what they got in Hesdalen, Norway. So what are we dealing with? It could be a new plasma discovery that for some reason nobody has ever paid attention to before.
All right. Your email is earthfiles@earthfiles.com, and your website is earthfiles.com. And anything else you want to give out very quickly?
Welcome questions, comments, news from your area to my email. And thanks, Art. This has been fun.
It's been great, Linda. Thank you so much. And we'll have you again very soon because there's so much to talk about. Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Good night. That's Linda Moulton Howe, folks. And this night, I'm afraid, has slipped away from us. I'll be back tomorrow.